Oi, Harari, prazer em falar contigo. Aqui é Maria Júlia Coutinho, eu sou jornalista. Bom, você já disse que essa pandemia que começou em 2020 nem se compara a outras crises sanitárias como gripe espanhola durante o século XX, peste negra no século XIV. Falou também que nessa guerra entre humanos e patógenos, os humanos nunca estiveram tão fortes, tendo em vista que desenvolvemos rapidamente vacinas seguras e eficazes contra o vírus que provoca a Covid. Também houve um sequenciamento genético desse vírus feito com muita rapidez e que, sim, a preocupação ou o maior desafio da humanidade é lidar com os demônios internos dos seres humanos, ganância, ódio, ignorância. Tendo em vista que estes demônios podem sim nos arruinar, qual seria a vacina contra eles?
A virus hijacks the cells of our own body and makes them produce more viruses that gradually spread and take over the entire body. It is the same with hatred. Political parties and religious movements hijack our own brains and make them produce hatred. For example, they hijack the brain mechanisms responsible for disgust. Disgust originally evolved in order to protect us against sources of disease and infection, like rotten food or rats. But politicians and religions can hijack these disgust mechanisms and turn them against certain human groups. You can often hear bigots saying that Muslims are dirty, or that gays are a source of pollution, or that women are impure. The Nazis compared Jews to rats and cockroaches. To protect ourselves from such manipulations, we need to know our own minds better. Most of us know surprisingly little about how our minds work. Just try to observe the next thought that pops up in your mind. Where did it come from? Our ignorance of our mind makes us vulnerable. We should spend more time and effort observing what is really happening inside us. It's difficult because what we observe inside ourselves is often painful and frightening. But doing it is not just the only way to protect ourselves from things like hatred, it is the only way to true happiness.
Olá, Harari, prazer falar com vocês, te fazer uma pergunta. Djamila Ribeiro, aqui, escritora. Estava muito pensando nesse sentido de construção de humanidade, né, a partir do que o pensador nigeriano Djamila Ribeiro traz, quando ele diz que a Europa é colocada como moderna e a África como atrasada, sendo que Europa e África coexistem no mesmo tempo histórico. Ele cita que é ridículo pensar que a Bélgica é moderna e o Congo, por exemplo, não é, quando a história de modernidade convencional da Bélgica está ligada diretamente à exploração do Congo. Então, nesse sentido de pensar a humanidade, como que a gente pode refletir a partir dessa perspectiva que o Laniano nos traz, né, de colocar sempre um em detrimento do outro e não entender que, na verdade, um está ligado ao outro, sobretudo aos processos de colonização.
That is exactly right. Humans often try to divide reality into separate things. Europe is modern, Africa is backward. Our nation is good, foreigners are bad. This kind of thing. But reality is actually made of relationships. Modernity isn't Europe. Modernity is the relationship between Europe, Africa, America, and the rest of the world. As children, most humans have fantasies of perfection and independence. I'm perfect. It's the other people who cause all the problems. I'm totally independent. I don't owe anything to anyone else. But nobody's really perfect, and we do all rely on others. Even the richest person in the world, of course, owes his wealth to other people. And he couldn't live a day without the people who make his food or clean his toilets. The human species, too, owes much of its wealth to other animals and plants. And if the plants die, we will also die. Growing up as a person, as a civilization, and as a species, involves understanding relationships. It means that we stop imagining that we are perfect and independent. We learn to see the numerous ways we depend on others and the numerous things that we owe others.
Dear Professor Harari, I'm Atila Iamarino. I'm a science communicator here in Brazil, mostly communicating through the pandemic at this moment. And I have a question about our knowledge and our actions that are based or not based on knowledge. We live in this age where we like to promote as science communicators, that is the information age, or the understanding, when we are understanding the world, how the universe works, how nature works, physics, chemistry, biology. We understand the pandemic, we know what's a virus, we know the role that vaccines have, and yet we have a country like the US that funded the development of many vaccines that we have available now, and one of the first countries to begin to vaccinate their population. But we still have more than 100,000 deaths by COVID among Americans, among unvaccinated Americans that don't believe in vaccines or hesitate to vaccinate and are dying of a preventable disease at this point, especially in the US. So how do we deal with this? We know how nature works, yet we are destroying the Amazon. We know how the weather works, how the climate works, and many don't believe in climate change and are not willing to act based on it. We know how COVID is transmitted and the importance of vaccines, and yet we have a huge population that is not taking those vaccines and is dying of COVID. So they're putting their lives on this misinformation. So how do we deal with this challenge? I would like to know what you think about it. How do you think we can, if we can, overcome this application of knowledge? How can we put all this knowledge we are capable of building and creating at this moment in to save lives, to save the planet, to save the world we live in? Thank you.
We humans are special animals. We can explore the truth about the world like no other animal. Chimpanzees, for example, don't know that viruses cause diseases. They don't even know that viruses exist. But we humans can also believe more nonsense than any other animal. No chimpanzee would ever believe that if he goes to some distant land and kills foreign chimpanzees, then after he dies, he will go to chimpanzee heaven and get lots of bananas and coconuts as a reward. Only humans believe such bizarre things. The situation today is in many ways better than ever. In more and more fields, we humans trust science and not superstition. 1,000 years ago, if an epidemic hit a medieval kingdom, people turned to priests to tell them what to do, and the priests would recommend things like fasting and praying, which were, in truth, quite useless. Today, when an epidemic hits, even the priests listen to the scientists and the doctors. Unfortunately, in recent years, populist politicians in many countries started to attack science. Populists try to gain power by inciting hatred against foreigners and minorities and depicting anyone who opposes them as a traitor. Once they gain power, they focus on destroying anybody who might restrict their power. They attack scientific truth because scientific truth doesn't obey them, so they fear it. To protect scientific truth, the key is institutions. We cannot protect science and truth as abstract ideals. We have to protect the independence of concrete institutions, like universities and newspapers, that research and publish scientific truth. No single person can alone establish what is the truth about the coronavirus epidemic or climate change. Without independent scientific institutions that are free to investigate and publish the truth, we have no way of telling the difference between nonsensical beliefs and scientific facts.
Oi, Harari, um prazer falar com você, te fazer uma pergunta. Gabriela Prioli aqui. A mim, o que mais chama a atenção no Sapiens é a tese de que a habilidade especial do Homo sapiens é a capacidade de criar narrativas e inventar mitos para que, acreditando nas mesmas histórias, nós nos tornemos capazes de cooperar em grandes grupos. Isso nos diferencia de todas as espécies e fez com que o Homo sapiens prevalecesse sobre todas as outras. A pergunta é, ou as perguntas, qual vai ser a capacidade do futuro? O que vai determinar que determinados grupos se sobressaiam sobre os outros? Como nós podemos nos preparar para o que está por vir? E será que nós seremos dominados pela inteligência artificial?
Within a century or two, planet Earth will probably be dominated by entities that are far more different from us than we are different from chimpanzees. Today, we still share with chimpanzees most of our bodily structures, our physical abilities, even our mental faculties. Not only our hands and eyes and brains are quite similar to those of chimps, but so are our love and our anger. Within 200 years, however, the combination of biotechnology and artificial intelligence might create radically alien bodies and minds. Indeed, we might see the emergence of the first inorganic life forms after 4 billion years of organic life. But the ability to invent stories will still be important. In fact, it will be more important than ever. Why? Because every technology can be used in many different ways, and the way we choose to use technology depends on the mythology in which we believe. Throughout history, people fantasized about heaven and hell, about angels and demons, but they couldn't actually create such things. Soon, we will acquire the ability to create both heaven and hell, to engineer both angels and demons. The mythology in which we believe will shape the future, not just of humanity, but of life itself.
Eu sou Ailton Krenak e queria dirigir uma pergunta ao Yuval Harari, que está, de certa maneira, relacionado com seu livro de grande repercussão, que fala da história dos Sapiens, né? Essa história da humanidade. Essa humanidade que nós somos induzidos a imaginar que tem uma certa continuidade histórica, uma certa relação entre povos no mundo inteiro, ela ainda tem alguma possibilidade de reconciliar-se com os outros seres vivos no planeta, ou esse descolamento é irreparável e nós vamos todos decolar da condição de terráqueos para uma outra condição?
Well, humans, of course, are animals. That's very clear. But for thousands of years, we've tried to deny this simple truth. That's one of the reasons why we treat other animals very cruelly and why we are unbalancing the entire ecosystem. It's not too late, though. We can still reconnect with the other beings on this planet. This will help us reconnect with many parts of ourselves too. And it is also not too late to save the ecosystem from disaster. The magic number is 2%. It's estimated that if we invest 2% of global GDP in developing new eco-friendly technologies and building eco-friendly infrastructure, that should be enough to prevent catastrophic climate change. Now, 2% of global GDP is a lot of money, but it's totally feasible. If it was 20%, it was probably hopeless. But 2%, we can do that. The typical job of politicians is shifting 2% of the budget from here to there. So we should pressure our politicians to do exactly that. It's a concrete, clear, and feasible target, 2%.